In the humid, high-stakes world of 19th century Lagos, few figures cast a shadow as long or as culturally significant as John Augustus Otonba Payne. Born in 1839 and passing in 1906, Payne was a man of two worlds, a quintessential Saro who navigated the burgeoning British colonial administration while remaining deeply anchored in his Yoruba royal heritage. While the British Empire provided the administrative skeleton for the colony of Lagos, it was Payne who provided its memory, its pulse, and its historical soul. As the Chief Registrar of the Supreme Court, he was far more than a bureaucrat. He was a bridge between the emerging Victorian state and the ancient traditions of the West African coast. Through his seminal work, The Lagos and West African Almanack and Diary, Payne meticulously documented the physical, political, and meteorological storms that shaped modern Nigeria, serving as the ultimate chronicler for an era of radical transformation. To understand how Payne documented the events of the late 19th century with such startling precision, one must first understand the unique social laboratory of the Saro people. Payne was a descendant of liberated Africans who had been resettled in Sierra Leone following the abolition of the slave trade before eventually returning to the Nigerian coast. Born in Sierra Leone to parents of Ijebu royal descent, his return to Lagos in the mid-1800s placed him within a new, influential social class of returnees. These individuals were Western-educated, Christian, and fluent in the intricacies of British law, yet they remained fiercely, often defiantly, proud of their African ancestry. Payne's dual identity was most visibly encapsulated in his name. While he functioned within the halls of the Supreme Court as John Augustus Payne, he fought a long-standing personal and political battle to reclaim and officially use his traditional title, Otunba. This was not merely a ceremonial gesture, but a profound statement of sovereignty. By blending the roles of a Victorian gentleman and a Yoruba aristocrat, he ensured that his documentation of Lagos was never a dry colonial report, but a vibrant, lived record of a people's resilience and survival. One of the most dramatic and enduring entries in Payne's records is his account of the atmospheric violence that struck the colony on June 12, 1886, an event he termed the Great Tornado. For Payne, weather was never a matter of idle conversation. It was a critical component of legal and structural history. In the West African parlance of the 1880s, a tornado did not refer to the rotating funnel clouds of the American plains, but rather to a line squall, a massive high-velocity thunderstorm system that moved with devastating linear force. Payne recorded the precursors to this event with the eye of a scientist, noting the period of stagnant, oppressive humidity that preceded the storm and the appearance of a terrifying copper-colored arch cloud rising in the east. When the storm finally struck, it unleashed straight-line winds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour, accompanied by a barrage of lightning and blinding rain. The 1886 storm served as a brutal stress test for the colony's rapidly changing architecture. At the time, Lagos was transitioning from traditional mud and thatch dwellings to the Brazilian and masonry structures that would come to define the colonial aesthetic. Payne recorded how the marina, the waterfront heart of the colony's commerce, bore the brunt of the winds. Ships were tossed like toys in the lagoon, and the wooden piers belonging to European firms like G.L. Geyser were shattered into driftwood. Even high-profile institutional buildings, such as the Custom House and Christ Church, suffered significant structural failure. Payne's role as registrar made these observations essential, as the storm triggered a wave of force majeure or act of God legal claims in the Supreme Court. His records provided the evidentiary basis for insurance disputes and property settlements, anchoring the chaos of nature into the orderly framework of the law. The year 1886 was a year of storms in more than just the meteorological sense. It was also a year of profound political upheaval. Payne recorded the official separation of the Lagos colony from the administration of the Gold Coast, an event that granted Lagos its own governor, Sir Cornelius Alfred Moloney. This autonomy was a turning point, allowing for direct investment in local infrastructure that Payne documented with obsessive detail. Simultaneously, a human storm was being settled in the interior. The Kiriji War, a 16-year civil conflict between the Ibadan and Ekiti Parapo forces, had paralyzed trade for over a decade. Payne was deeply involved in the logistics of the peace mission, recording the exact movements of messengers and the eventual signing of the treaty in September 1886. For Payne, the cessation of hostilities was as significant as any weather event, for it reopened the economic arteries of palm oil and ivory that fueled the Lagos docks. By the time Payne began compiling the data for his 1893 Almanack, his focus had shifted from recording disasters to charting the arithmetic of progress. The 1891 census was his masterpiece of data collection, a snapshot of a rising cosmopolitan metropolis. He recorded a total colony population of 85,607, with 32,508 people packed into the dense streets of Lagos Island. He noted the presence of 150 European residents and approximately 3,500 Saro and Amaro Brazilian returnees. For Payne, these numbers were a tool for advocacy. He used the high density of Lagos Island to argue for better public health and fire safety, reminding his readers that the Great Fire of 1877 and the Tornado of 1886 were only as catastrophic as they were because of the city's crowded conditions. He saw the census as proof that Lagos was becoming the primary hub of West Africa, a city that required modern solutions for its ancient geography. The years between 1887 and 1893 in Payne's diary read like a chronicle of the arrival of the modern world. He recorded the landing of the first direct telegraphic cable in 1886, which connected Lagos to London and ensured that news of the colony's triumphs and tragedies reached the metropole in hours rather than weeks. He documented the 1887 Golden Jubilee of Queen Victoria, which led to the foundation of Glover Memorial Hall, the definitive social center for the Lagos elite. In 1888, he noted the arrival of the first street lamps, oil-burning fixtures that brought a semblance of security to the dark, squall-prone evenings of the marina. By 1892, his records took on a more personal tone as he documented the Magbon War or the Anglo-Ijebu War. As a man of Ijebu descent, Payne's account of the British expeditionary force that opened the Ijebu roads was bittersweet, marking the end of his ancestral home's isolation, but also its integration into the global trade network. In 1893, he recorded the first railway surveys, an event he viewed as the ultimate victory over the difficult terrain that had long limited the colony's reach into the hinterland. Payne also understood that a city's history is built upon the lives of its people, and his necrology sections are some of the most historically rich portions of his work. He recorded the passing of King Dosunmu in the mid-1880s, marking the final transition from a traditional kingdom to a crown colony. He similarly honored the death of Madam Tinubu in 1887, the legendary merchant and power broker who had defied both local and colonial authorities. By including these indigenous figures alongside colonial officials, Payne was asserting a fundamental truth. The history of Lagos was not just a British story, but a Yoruba one. As the chief registrar, Payne's most lasting contribution to the daily life of the colony was his development of the rules of court. He was an early pioneer in the argument that British common law had to respect native law and custom. He documented the court's growing recognition of Yoruba land tenure systems, a move that prevented the total erasure of indigenous property rights. He also facilitated the small cause court, which allowed local traders to settle disputes without the prohibitive costs and delays of formal British litigation. This was indigenized law at its finest, presided over by a man who signed his official documents with his traditional Otunba title to signal that the court was a place where local identity was respected. The economic records Payne left behind from 1893 reveal a colony in the midst of a profound pivot. He documented the shift from the palm oil era to the rise of cocoa and rubber. He noted the potential of cocoa, a newcomer to the botanical stations at Ibutimeta, and charted the rubber boom of the early 1890s, where wild trees in the interior were being tapped to meet European demand. These statistics were the lifeblood of the colony. They determined the customs duties that funded every bridge, lamp, and courtroom. Payne understood that if the trade in palm kernels dropped due to a local squabble or a tornado, the very stability of the colony was at risk. Finally, Payne's 1893 records immortalized the Carter expedition, a massive trek led by Governor Gilbert Carter to secure the safety of the roads in the interior. Payne recorded the logistics with the precision of a quartermaster, listing the gifts sent to the Alaafin of Oyo and the specific terms of the treaties signed with the Oni of Ife. He saw this expedition as the ultimate insurance policy for the Lagosian economy. If the roads were safe, the marina would be prosperous. Otunba J. O. Payne died in 1906, but his legacy as the chronicler of the colony remains unmatched. He was the man who counted the people, timed the storms, and mediated the peace. He taught the citizens of Lagos that a great tornado was more than a weather event. It was a marker of time and a catalyst for change. In the transition from a collection of lagoon islands to the centerpiece of a new nation, Payne was the keeper of the keys. His almanacs were so accurate that they were used as primary evidence in land disputes for over half a century after his death. He did not just record history, he authenticated the reality of a people caught between two worlds, ensuring that the African perspective was permanently etched into the legal and historical bedrock of the nation.